Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Magical ones, to an amazing episode, and before we dive in, I would just love to invite you to one of our Manifesting with the Moon gatherings. If you have landed here fairly recently and you aren't aware of this, we typically gather in our Secret Witch Sisterhood every month, although actually more recently we've been doing it on Zoom. So you can find out more about this, but essentially it's like a secret witch party. So it's a fun gathering at New Moon where we gather to manifest magic and dive a little bit more deeply into opening to our healing gifts. So that will be this Thursday or most months. And you can find out more by heading to nicolebarton.co.uk/moon-ritual. We would love to have you with us. On The Secret Witch Show today, though, our guest is Genevieve Davis, or Sasha Stephens, as is her real name. Genevieve was living a miserable, drab life until, at the age of 43, she experienced a profound magical transformation. And she's been teaching and writing about magic ever since. With a distinctly practical and down-to-earth approach to magic, her philosophy is simple. Magic is available to all. And a good teacher merely nudges people to rediscover the magic they already possess. An author of 22 books, Genevieve runs the Academy of Magic, an online teaching resource for all magically minded people. In this episode, we discuss the power of magic in healing life's mundanity. Genevieve shares her personal journey from rock bottom with a mundane life of debt and disempowerment to discovering magic and changing her destiny. We dive into the significance of storytelling, the misconception of magic in our culture, and the crucial role of inner healing for real manifestation, illuminating the importance of facing our fears and opening to self-healing. We also dived into being openly magical in a logical world and the empowering importance of honesty and practical advice for integrating magic. Let's dive in. Welcome, Genevieve. There's something infectious about the kind of possibility that your magic and all that you've created creates for people, I think. And I myself have been a fan of your books for many, many years. And I know we've also kind of talked back and forth about you coming on the show for years. So I'm really, really glad that we're able to have this conversation. And I know also I've shared your books with one-to-one clients and seen that kind of possibility open up for them. So I'm looking forward to diving in. And I think that's particularly powerful for women who are listening to the show, because from what I've experienced of secret witches, although they're often very powerful, what I'd call creatrixes, we can also easily kind of get bogged down in the darkness, fear our magic, fear real magic, despite also feeling that simultaneous like deep call for it. So I'm excited for this conversation, and welcome.
Thank you, Nicole. Very, very nice to be here. That was a lovely welcome. Very nice to finally meet you and finally be on this show, because we have talked a little bit back and forth, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start where I always usually start, which is because a lot of the work that I do is very much kind of about how women's stories are the medicine for others. And I think people's stories are very healing and very activating. The way I say it is we're all kind of archetypal remedies for each other, and our stories kind of initiate others into that opening to healing. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about your own journey, if that feels aligned.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. For those of you who don't know me, yeah, my name's Genevieve Davis. My real name is Sasha Stephens. I suppose I discovered magic about 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago now. And like a lot of people, I think I discovered it during a period of a really low point in my life, a point where I was incredibly disempowered, where I felt I was living actually a very dull, mundane life. I felt at the age of 43, I had completely wasted my life. I was recently divorced. I was horrifically in debt, credit card debt up to my ears. And I was working a full-time job, 12-hour shifts in a factory packing. I was really in a bad way. I was very overweight. I was single, chronically single. I had no friends. It was the rock bottom moment. It was one of those periods when I just thought this was not the life I wanted to live. This is not the life I intended to. I was 43 before this happened. And it actually all turned around one evening. There was literally a moment. There was literally a turning point.
Wow.
When as I said, I was working 12-hour shifts in this factory. It was back-breaking work. My fingers were all snapped off. My skin was dry. My hair was dry. It was dreadful. And I realized it was Sunday night and I was getting my things ready for work in the morning. And I realized I spent the entire weekend and I hadn't spoken to a single soul. I literally that evening fell on the floor in despair, literally fell into a heap on the floor in despair, and called out to God, the universe, whatever. I just called out, please help me. Somebody help me. I can't carry on with this miserable existence any longer. It was the lowest point of my life. And there was no reply. There was no reply. And in that moment, I realized something incredible. And it's very hard for me to put this into words, but I'll do my best. I realized that nobody was ever going to save me. There was nobody that was going to step in. No knight in shining armor was going to come along. Nobody was going to notice my brilliance and say, hey, why are you living this life? Come here, there's another life for you. No one was going to do that. But somehow in that moment, I realized something else incredible, that if I wanted something to change, I had to do it myself. And that was the moment. It was like, oh, I can do it myself. This is for me. It's all about me. It's all for me to change. And that moment was the most empowering insight I've ever had, because it turned completely from being a victim to suddenly taking control of things. And suddenly I was in control of my life from that moment on. And things rapidly, I mean, I'm not saying, I got up the next day and won the lottery or something and met the love of my life, but it rapidly started to change from that moment on.
Wow.
And in the beginning, it was just little small changes, like stopping complaining, feeling gratitude, those little things that we're supposed to do, going to work and seeing the good in people, going to work and actually putting in a really good day's work rather than grumbling all day long. It was little changes in me. And what I came to see very quickly was that any change in me was pretty rapidly reflected in the outside world. So when I wanted to see a change, I had to change me. And that's never that was 12 years ago, and an awful lot has changed in that time. But that fundamental insight hasn't left me, that if I want to see a change, it's for me to change. It's not for the world to change. It comes from within. It's always from within. So yeah, that's basically my story. And 12 years later, I've sold 500,000 books, got memberships, do coaching, and I've created really a life to dream about. It's pretty idyllic being me. I have to say, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet, but it's really turned out to be quite incredible, the turnaround from that low point to where I am now.
That's really gorgeous. I love the unapologeticness of that, like owning that this is my idyllic life now. That's really
It's funny
gorgeous.
because, aren't we, as particularly as women, we do tend to apologize for things. Men don't
Mm,
apologize for their success, but women do. And even
mm.
now, I still have that in me. I'm like, look, trying not to blow my own trumpet here, but why not? Why not blow my own trumpet? Why do
Yeah,
we not own our success?
I
So
love that.
we should
Yeah.
own our success and realize when we do well, own that and feel proud of
Mm,
ourselves for it. So
yes.
I'm very proud of the way I've turned things around, the way I've
Mm.
managed to make the change.
Yeah, that's really gorgeous. There's so many places I kind of want to go with what you just said, but I think that what you've just, even just that, I think that whole story opens up so much possibility for our listeners, because secret witches who are, in essence, women who are secretly powerful and magical, um they often don't know their power, and can feel, you know, right back when we were talking about the mundane life, there's that sense of, and I this was very much part of my own journey, interesting as well. I think I referred to it as having the victim slap.
Yeah.
And when I had my own insight about that, mine was different. Mine was a therapist saying, well, you're not a victim, are you? And I'd never really identified as a victim, so it's like a slap across my
Yeah.
face. So I realized, oh, actually I have been. And I think, you know, I have so much love for that part of me as well. So it's important for us to kind of love that innocence of us being the victim,
Yeah.
that when we suddenly realize that that's what we've been doing, like it is so healing and transformative. So I loved what you shared there. I think if I was a listener, I would be wondering, and I know you started to dive into that a little bit about the kind of inside out piece. I think I'd be wondering, well, how does that relate to magic? Because I can kind of tie it together in my own mind. But I think if I was listening, I'd be like, okay, well, now you've realized that you can create life. Like, how does that tie into what we would know, I guess, as magic in society?
Well, I think probably the way magic is portrayed in society is, uh, I think, is fairy tales. I
Mm.
don't see magic in that way. Magic is not something. I've always said magic isn't something we do on the world. We don't see an external world and then say a spell or something to affect. This is the way I see it. Other people
Mm.
may see it differently. That's fine. But this is the way I see it. I don't affect magic on an outside world and cause it to change. It's more that the magic is, it's more fundamental than that. It's that every single, at some point you come to a realization that every single aspect of your experience is being created from within. And this is
Mm.
hard. This is actually a deep insight, but it's difficult to explain, to understand what's going on until you realize this. But what you're experiencing is coming from you, is
Mm.
coming from you. We can only experience really what we are creating. This entire experience is being created by us. So there's no external world that we're doing things on. It's more
Mm.
like we are in the process of changing us. What we see changes.
Mm.
So literally, even if you take this on a very crude level, if you wake up in a bad mood one day and you go about in a bad mood, all you see is misery. Everything's annoying you. This pisses you off. That person's annoying. Cars, cutting you up in traffic. People giving you funny looks. That's a very crude way. And if you wake up in a good mood, suddenly it's like everything seems happy. Everything seems great. People seem to be friendly. Luck seems to be coming to you. You get the perfect parking space. That
Mm.
And that taken to extreme is what I call magic. And that, because that
Mm.
goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It's not just about parking spaces, and it's not just that things seem a little bit brighter when you're in a good mood. It's that when you're in a good mood, different things happen. That
Mm.
the actual world you see is different.
Yes. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say in that is magic is our creative power in essence,
Yeah.
which feels to be deeply true to me. And I think talking about the witch as an archetype, that very much feels like what my journey with the witch has been, like reclaiming her power, which has been, innocently misused, in essence, to create what she doesn't want.
Yeah.
And now we can learn to work with her and create magically by creating what we do want, by almost like the journey that I've been on with that is a lot of, and I don't know how you feel about this, it might be something that you haven't explored or has a different worldview, but it feels like to me, the more I go in and do kind of the shadow work and pieces like that, and start to unpick that and see where I'm creating from old patterns, old stories that I've created, the more I'm then able to love that part of me and create differently and be like, okay, well, actually, there's maybe a new story here. So I'm just going to pause there and see what your worldview on that is. But it feels like that's what you're speaking to.
That's not, those aren't the words I'd use, but you're explaining exactly the same, exactly it. It's almost, it becomes almost as if when you see something in the world you don't want, and this is going quite, this is going quite deep, quite fast. I wasn't even sure I was going to intend this, but when you see something in the world you don't like, it's almost that's an outward manifestation of some part of you that you're not happy with. Yes. So there's something in there that you don't like. It might be a bad memory. It might be an unhelpful pattern. It might be just a sense of not being good enough, or not being loved, or not being understood, or not being listened to. And this, I think it's true that a lot of this happens when we're children and when we're growing up. And these stuck bits, these bits inside of us that we don't even know are there, the bits of discomfort, they, for want of a better word, they manifest things we don't want. And that sounds awfully, that really does sound like old-fashioned magic, but it's the only way I can really describe it. It is like when you're seeing something you don't like, when something happens in your life you don't like, it's still a case of needing to look within and seeing and healing within. And when you heal within, it just magically happens that those things stop appearing in your life.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, actually, just about going back to that healing from within, because I know you said that earlier, and that was something that I was feeling called to go back and revisit. And it feels like what you're saying is it really does come from the inside and manifest outwards. Whereas when we can typically approach like manifestation or law of attraction pieces, that it's like we wish for what we want externally, rather than doing that deep inner work to see that we're already creating.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing extra to do to create. It's like we're already creating, and what are we creating unconsciously?
Yeah. And you know, a lot of this is unconscious, but it can become very conscious. And I think one of the really key things for me, and one of the things I do try to teach people to do, is I'm less about the techniques for manifesting things. I'm less about, here is a way to manifest what you want. Use the law of attraction in this way. Do this visualization. I'm really not into that, because they will only work for a handful of people, and then people wonder why it's not working for them. So I'm telling you now, if you used a technique for manifesting and it hasn't worked, you know, join the club. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you at all. It's learning to manifest, learning to create change is about being willing and able to look within, for want of a better word, to look at yourself, to take a really close and really honest look at what's going on with me. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I wanting? What's actually here in me? And that starts to open things up so that those unconscious patterns become really conscious, and you start to see like, oh, I can completely see why I always attract useless men. I can see why I can never have success with money. It becomes conscious when you start looking within. And until you do that, you can mess around in the outside world trying to make things happen as much as you want, but those patterns just keep continuing to repeat. Those unhelpful patterns will repeat and repeat and repeat until you go within and look for what it is that's making that repeat, what it is. So it even becomes a bit like the unhelpful things that we experience, the things we don't like in life, are actually a bit of a gift, because they are actually showing us the areas in us where we need to work. It's all laid out for us. It's actually really helpful. The universe, when things go wrong, is actually helping us. It's saying, look, here is a bit you need to look at.
Yeah, I love that so
Okay.
much. And I think we have so much resistance to that darkness, to looking at that darkness. And one of my guys calls it, and I now call it material for our liberation, because it's literally coming in to show us like where we're creating unconsciously what we don't want, and where we can actually start to create what we do want. So I love everything that you've just shared there.
And
I think it's also, sorry, go on.
no, I was going to say, and it's all in the yucky stuff. The good,
Mm,
the where we want to go, as you've just rightly said, is into the places we don't want to go. That's
yeah.
where the gold is. There's one of my favorite quotes. I'm sure lots of your followers will know this. There's a famous quote by Joseph Campbell:
Mm,
"The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And it's
yes.
there. It's the places you fear to enter. It's the places you don't want to go.
Mm,
That's where the gold is. If
it
you can
really
have the
is.
courage and the integrity to go within to those places you don't want to feel, you don't want to face, you don't want to face the shame, the unwantedness, those yucky feelings.
Mm,
They are absolutely ripe. They're just bursting with potential for transformation. Go
mm,
in, find them, feel them, see what they've got to say, and
yeah.
your life will change in incredible ways.
I love that. I love that so much. And I guess the way that I'd phrase that is real magic, rather than, the magic, the fantasy of magic that we project onto the word magic, I guess.
I suppose the fantasy of magic, magic does become so incredible that it is fantastical. It is absolutely
Mm,
mind-blowing. It's not, it is, and it's better really than Harry Potter style magic. But it's just that I try to get away from the idea of doing magic on the world and doing this,
yes.
because I think there is a temptation to think that magic is an easy way out, and
Mm,
it's not. It's a commitment. It's
mm,
a lifelong, I'm sure you must know this. It's a lifelong study, commitment. You've got to apply yourself to this. You've got to be willing to step up, take action, look within, be incredibly honest with yourself, and go places
mm,
that you don't want to go.
mm,
Magic is not a get rich quick. It's not a get an easy life quick. It
mm,
does make life effortless and fantastic, and it can bring you wealth and fun and a wonderful life. It can bring you all that stuff, but it takes effort to get to the
mm.
stage where you can use it effectively. That's I think. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
talking too much now. I'll
No,
let you
I
speak.
love that. And I think it's a really good teaching point, I think, because it's so opposite to what we're taught about magic.
Yeah.
So it's like that feels really fresh and exciting, and feels deeply true to me as well. I think what could be helpful to explore, just given we touched on it there, is we were just having a kind of debate about, is this healing? Is this not healing, before we press record? And I think that's again like a really great point around how we view healing. Like, we're so often used to viewing healing as like going and getting somebody to heal us, going to a healer, going to get a quick fix. Them, they've got the magic, it's all in them, they're just going to fix us. And actually what we're talking about here is real magic, but also real healing. It's like,
Yeah.
as we start to do the work to unpack these stories that we're holding, and see where we're creating from those, like, real healing to me is the transformation that then gets created from being in that work. And I just wondered if you had anything to speak to on that.
I would totally agree, Nicole. In fact, I think that's the only true healing, because
Mm,
it's only the sort of transformation that comes from within that makes a permanent change. I mean, you can go along and you can see a therapist, or you can have, you can take some antidepressants, or you can see some sort of external healer,
mm,
and it might make you feel better for a bit, but unless you get that internal change and understanding, unless you
mm,
get that insight that makes you aware of, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is where this comes from, unless that happens, it, it's kind of very superficial healing on the outside.
mm,
It can
mm,
happen. I'm not saying that other therapists
mm,
and healers and doctors and medication can't help, but
mm.
it's more of a kind of a plaster over the top, rather than a
Mm.
deep change from within. The
Yeah.
sort of change from within can really make incredible sorts of healings. And yeah, it's and even physically, I've my other half used to have when I first met my partner, he had all sorts of physical problems. He had all sorts of illnesses. I've talked about this in some of my books, so he doesn't mind me talking about it. He had all sorts of ailments. He was going to the doctor. He was on lifelong medication. He was told he's probably going to have surgery and steroids and everything else. And as a result of getting together with me, and I sort of encouraged him to see his ailments, and this is purely physical we're talking, see his physical ailments in a completely different way, to start telling a different story about them, which is something I talk a lot about, to start not talking about illness quite so much. Everything started to change for him, and he basically came off all medication. He never had that operation. He never took steroids, and he considers himself cured of his so-called incurable diseases.
That's magical.
So I cured myself from insomnia, chronic insomnia, chronic backache, all sorts of things, and these are physical things.
I love that. It's very that's utterly magical, and it is very much my own experience as well. I feel like this is, everything we're talking about here is just, we're kind of sharing the same worldview on how magical healing works, and ultimately I'm hearing like real magic is the way to self-healing. And yeah, that's really, I think that's so powerful, because it's just not how we see healing or magic in this world. What I wanted to speak to, because you keep saying about honesty, and I absolutely love, for me, I live for truth, so that's it's the most important thing. And I would love to speak to, because we talked briefly on this before we press record as well, is that your pen name is Genevieve Davis, and your real name is Sasha. So I'd love, because we said we'd dive into that, talking about honesty kind of triggered it in my mind. It's like, this is the honesty of you. I'd love to dive into like the journey of you kind of writing as this other name, and kind of liberating and coming out as yourself, and being you as well. So I don't know if that feels a good place.
No, that's great. It's a great thing to talk about, because it's funny, because your show is called Secret Witch, and that's basically what I was in the beginning when I discovered magic. And I always called it magic from the very beginning. It felt to me, the word magic, the word magic itself for me feels alive. There's a sense to it. It is a powerful word for me. It wasn't anything, I didn't want to describe it as coincidence or psychology. I didn't want to know about the science behind it. I didn't care. I wanted it. It was magic. It was magic that made it work. It was the sense of magic that allowed me to drop out of my mind and go into my body and realize and feel. It was a very powerful sense. But I had come from an academic background, and the friends I did have, I had, I'd done a PhD, and the sense I felt like I couldn't come out. I couldn't allow people to know that I was now working with magic. I couldn't allow my friends to know this. It was a secret. I didn't want to be questioned about it. I didn't want people to ridicule me. And I kept it a complete secret, which is why I wrote my first, well, actually, I've written all the books under the name Genevieve Davis. That was a name that sounded magic-y to me. So for years, I had this secret identity, and nobody knew, not even my own mother. Nobody, none of my friends knew. My partner, Mike, knew, and my son knew, but the rest didn't. And even my son didn't know for a while. And it was a complete secret. And that secrecy in itself was delicious. I loved the secrecy. I loved this double life. I loved people saying, how have you managed to sort your life out? And I would just fob them off and go, oh yeah, I just got lucky, blah, blah, blah. I know I've worked out how Amazon works. That's why I'm selling all the books. I didn't tell people for a long time until, and then at some point, I just realized I can come out now. I can come out of the shadows. I was such a transformed person, and I don't think I was strong enough before that point to willingly be open to the world. So the process of finding integrity, in a sense, was was a gradual one. Didn't have to go all out like, oh, here I am naked for the world to see. It wasn't like that. It was a slow process.
I love
And
that.
eventually I released some videos to my followers, to my mailing list, and said, hey, come and meet me. This is me. My real name is Sasha, and this is what I look like. And the world didn't explode, and nothing went wrong, and nobody hated me. It was straight. It was just amazing. And from then on, then it was just like a big relief drop from me, and I realized, okay, now I just have to go full on integrity, and that guides me, because if you can have integrity, is a very real honesty with yourself is such a powerful thing, because when we're afraid of what the world thinks of us, when we're speaking according to what we should say, or we think is the right thing to say, or we're trying to be clever, or we're trying to put up a mask, or we're trying to come across in a certain way, or we're trying to fit ourselves in with these other clever people, that becomes exhausting. It's so difficult to keep that up. It's so hard to remember the rules of what you're supposed to say, and did I say the right thing to that person, and oh, do I look like an idiot now, or does she think I'm stupid, or I shouldn't have said that, or I don't care about any of that anymore, because I'm just me now. It's just what you see is what you get. If you don't like me, I can't help that, because there's a real freedom. There's an absolute freedom in being incredibly honest. And yeah, it's a very, very powerful, and it grows. Integrity, it's not done yet. There are still bits of me that I'm probably hiding. There's still parts of me that are still hidden, and I find them and think, oh, it opens, and you find another layer of stuff you didn't know was there, and suddenly you feel even more open, and the world changes again, and it's pretty fabulous. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I think so many women will relate to that who are listening as well, because they do tend to be also brilliantly minded. I think there's this also like argument between magic and logic that can kind of happen as well. So maybe we could talk a bit about that. But I think just to share what you said about it, it takes time. I think that in itself also offers an integrity that isn't in the world. When women kind of taught, you can be a healer, come learn Reiki or any of these quick fix tools, there's this perception, I just do this certificate and then I go out and I'm a healer, and I always talk about how there is a real journey to go on, and that's really the work that we do here in the secret witch path to the healed witch, if you like, or the fully expressed witch, or whatever you want to call her. Like there's that real journey of becoming a healer, because it is a becoming. I think what you just said there around becoming, like taking you a while, is so refreshing and almost like relieving for people who think that they should just be quickly just I'm just me and that's all.
It really is a journey. It really is a journey. And but that every step on that journey, even when it feels like something isn't working and it feels like progress is slow, is totally worth it. It leads somewhere wonderful. Honestly, it's worth it. Of course, you're not going to be a brilliant healer in the beginning. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. Of course, it's going to feel like wading through treacle sometimes, but it's all part of the journey. You don't get to miss that bit out. That's the important thing about magic. Magic doesn't allow you to miss out that difficult bit. You still have to take those steps. You still have to slip up. You still have to make mistakes, get things wrong, in order to pick yourself up and learn and move on. And baby steps. That's what I did in the beginning. Little changes, constant little changes. Don't have to go in and scare yourself to death with huge steps or huge healings, or become I don't know, international healer overnight and launch yourself out. I wouldn't do that. Didn't even start doing, private coaching and video sessions until, relatively recently. So
I think it also, each of those steps that we take, coming back to magic, reveals where we've got resistance, reveals where we've got wounding around becoming our fully expressed selves. I think that story about you going from being Genevieve and hiding as that kind of secret witch to being you as Sasha, and still of course embracing what Genevieve has created as well, is really magical. I wondered if we could just dive back into the piece about brilliance and kind of that logic versus magic debate. Because we've had a scientist. I was looking back over your book yesterday. We had a scientist on to talk about is magic real, which was really fascinating. And then there was something that you said in the book, if I can find it, let me just see, just about like magic not being able to be measured by science. And I thought there was something really interesting to explore in that. There we go. When I learned to drop my attachment to logical argument and to feel what is really there, I was able to drop into a whole different world of knowing, a whole different way of knowing. There's no longer any need to hide in the shadows behind a pen name or to be embarrassed about my belief in such a cosmic idea. And I realized it was essential. Magic remained a mystery to me. And you talked about how science is unfit for the purpose of measuring magic. So I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit to that. Like, is magic real?
Yeah, magic is real. Magic is in fact, and I come from my background was not in science but in philosophy, but I suppose it's not scientific method, but it's very, very logical. It's about philosophy is all about creating cast iron intellectual arguments for things. So it's very step by step, it's very precise. And that was my background. And I can see really these days, I do not see the scientific world as the real world. The scientific world, science is just another way of describing what happens. Magic is another way of describing what happens. And one is not, I do not see that science is more real than magic. In fact, I feel like it's a level up, and that magic is closer to, for want of a better word, reality. And now where was I going to go with this? The thing about magic and what you just described in that passage there was that when we are very scientific, when we have a scientific mind, we have a very rational mind, and a lot of us are very proud of that, particularly if we're, we've got intellectual, we've had intellectual success, academic success like I did. We can be very proud of that identity, and I was very proud of my academic success. We don't realize the extent to which that intellectual thinking can keep us trapped in a certain way of seeing things. And it's actually a very blinkered view, because believe it or not, science can't explain everything. There's loads science can't explain. It doesn't kind of admit to that. It kind of tries its best to explain everything, but it can't. Loads of completely real phenomenon that it has no explanation for. And the great thing about magic is you don't have to understand it. You don't have to understand how it works. You can actually just go, it's magic. And to a scientist, that's just silly, woolly-headed nonsense. But to somebody who knows how magic works, that's the most powerful thing you can do. You go, I don't know. And when you go, I don't know, you drop out of your thinking and you access actually a wiser part of you. You access the place of intuition. You access the place of like the source of emotion and feeling, the source of everything. Science is only an explanation that sits on top of what's here. Science isn't actually what's here.
Yeah.
But magic, and the concept of magic, just the acceptance of the existence of magic, drops you beneath the layer of rational explanation into what's really here. What's really here. And what's really here, most of us have never noticed it because we're too stuck in our heads. And what's really here, it's flipping amazing. It's really exciting and interesting and fascinating and glowing with energy and potential. I can't even explain it. You can't explain it because words don't go there. And that's why magic's so powerful. It's not something you can talk about. It's something you can only kind of drop into an experience.
I love that. And I actually really love, I'm just contemplating as you said that, you can't really describe it, but if I feel into your book energetically, like the energetic of it just feels like this like treasure chest of like a possibility. And so I think even though there's like that sense of like not being able to contain it in words, there's still like an energetic feeling to your book. I don't know if I'm, this is probably a magical way of explaining something that isn't very logical, but that's just how your book feels to me. So I think even though there's like, you can't explain it in words, it's still, there's a feeling to it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And that's, don't dismiss that. That's actually, that's the most important thing. The
Yes.
words are just pointers. The words
Yes.
don't matter. It doesn't matter if you could read my books and not understand a single word of what I'm saying, but you could still completely get it.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes explain it in this way. Sometimes people often write to me and say, my goodness, your book resonates with me so much. It's like you're in my head. People say all the time, it's like you're in my head. It's like you wrote this for me. The reason that happens is because what I'm pointing to, what I'm talking about, is something that's in all of us. We've all got access to this. We've all got access to what I'm writing about. So when I say something and it resonates, all it means is that you've kind of noticed that bit inside you.
Yes.
It's like the bit inside me that I'm talking about resonates with the bit inside you. It's like it jiggles it awake. And that's why you go, oh, I
love that. You so perfectly explained in that sentence how we talk about archetypal remedies in the archetypal apothecary path that I teach, and you just perfectly summed up, like, there's, in essence, we're each like an inner apothecary of different archetypal remedies, different aspects of us that have been locked away, shamed, shoved down, and we're each an archetypal remedy for each other. So it would be like your book is like an archetypal remedy. I'm going to say it's the archetypal remedy of like aurum or gold, which is about that kind of, or lunar it could be as well, which is about magic. But in essence, whatever your remedy is, like, other people will feel that, resonate with it, and it'll unlock that lunar aspect within themselves. So I love how you just described that, and it just made me think of that.
Lovely. Isn't it interesting how people have completely, because alchemy is not something I know anything about. I think it's a fascinating subject. I really would love to know more about it, but it's just not my vocabulary. But it's funny how people with completely different frameworks and completely different vocabulary are talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
It is.
You start to see what's happened to me more recently is I start to see that what I'm talking about and what you're talking about there is everywhere. It's in Christianity, it's in Buddhism, it's in science, it's in everybody's actually talking about the same thing. Anyone who's speaking honestly, really truly honestly, is talking about the same thing. We're just using different language to do so, even in science.
And our unique language, which is our own version of that archetypal remedy.
It's thrilling to see that, because it makes you realize, oh my goodness, I'm really onto something here, because I'm saying the same thing that Jesus said in just different words. Isn't that, we're saying the same thing.
Jesus. I'm basically Jesus. Yeah.
But what he's pointing to is the same as what we're pointing to, and the same as you're pointing to. We're pointing to the same thing. We're just using incredibly different vocabulary to do so.
Which I think is actually really significant as well to just briefly illuminate, because I think ultimately that is, we are all unique expressions of the same thing. And again, this is going quite deep, but it just triggered something about like how we kind of differentiate like the universe and soul, which I see as like a unique expression of magic, I guess you could say. But anyway, that's probably beside the point. There was just something to come back to the brilliance piece and magic and science. One of the things that came up for me when you were talking about that is how I've often, because I used to be a homeopath. So often they would come up against quite deep resistance because nobody could understand how this works. Like we're taking sugar pills with they're energetic, and that's partly woven into my past. There's always a lot of resistance around magic, and the science had a lot of resistance to homeopathy. And I always felt like magic was really just something that wasn't able to yet be explained by science, because and also because science kind of almost like created how it measures everything. So it's like we can't really, if it's going to create it, how do we measure something that isn't fitting into what it's creating, how it measures it, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So I don't know if there's anything else to explore around that. I just wanted to share that point.
What is there to say? It's funny because I can see now that science has taken the place in society as it is the accepted view. This is truth. Science. Once upon a time, it wasn't science. Once upon a time, religion did that. So if
Yes.
you said something outside, you said something heretical,
Mm.
you were, for a start, you were going to hell. But besides all that, you were just plain wrong. You
Mm.
got it wrong. You were talking about nonsense,
Mm.
because religion and what religion was dictating was the truth.
Mm.
And science has actually taken the place of that. And we don't even, it's so weird because we're so locked in this paradigm of science. Anything, for a lot of us, anything that doesn't fit just doesn't exist. It's so,
Mm.
of course, how on earth could sugar pills work? I mean, because that's not possible. They completely
Mm.
ignore the fact that placebo exists in every single treatment.
Mm.
Placebo
Yeah.
effect works. And something, I think sometimes we imagine that placebo is only there for things like sugar pills. Oh yes,
Mm.
if
Mm.
homeopathy works, it's because of the placebo effect.
Mm.
Placebo effect is also there in cancer treatments. It's also there in
Mm.
vaccines. It's also there in antibiotics. Placebo effect isn't just in the
Mm.
alternative therapies.
I love
It's
that. Yeah.
there always. And
Mm.
that is, for some reason, isn't why isn't that something they're looking more into? Why isn't that a bit more surprising? What's the
Mm.
explanation for
Yeah.
placebo?
Wow. And it ties back into, of course, then that's, us creating reality by believing
Yeah,
something that works. So
exactly.
I love that. Yeah. No, that's so true. There's something else that you said there that I was just thinking about how that was like kind of the modern day metaphorically being burned at the stake.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
And that's still kind of happening. That's kind of happening now. When people step outside of, cancel we don't want to get into politics and things, but cancel culture and all this sort of thing.
Mm.
People say the wrong thing and they are metaphorically burned at the stake.
Mm.
They're like silenced.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to say these things. You're not
Mm.
allowed to say that this does not fit our paradigm, so we will not allow you to. And it's still happening. It's still happening.
Mm. And I think
And
that's really relevant to speak to, actually, because again, the secret witch fears most being burned at the stake, being rejected, being outcast for her magic. So I guess what would you say to women who are really like secretly into magic, secretly like really loving this conversation and want to, open themselves up to it? What would you say to them if they're having that fear of like really embracing magic?
what is the fear of embracing magic, or is the fear of being burned at the stake by others? Because
Mm.
I see no problem with keeping this secret. I
Mm.
see no problem with keeping this secret forever. I
Mm.
am convinced that a lot of very, very, very successful people, probably some of the most
Mm.
successful people, famous successful people, are using what I would call magic, but
Mm.
they don't let on.
Mm.
So
I love
you're
that.
not under no obligation to come out to the world and tell everybody what you do. You're under no obligation to do that. Keep it as secret as you like, I would say, until
Mm.
it feels right. Like it did
Yes.
for me. At some point it was like, oh, this is silly now. I can do this now.
Yeah.
And I did
I
come
think,
out to the world, but you don't have to do that.
no, I love that. And I think what that points to almost is like there's probably two kinds of listeners that we have on the show, which is those that are here to learn to heal themselves and those that are here to heal others. And so it's almost like a two-phase journey. If they're wanting to be healers, is like we have to firstly learn to heal ourselves
Yeah.
and work with magic ourselves, which is something I'm really, we often talk, we don't have to do that. So again, it's part of that becoming a healer journey. But for those who want to be a healer, there is then like that second part of the journey, which is like then overcoming the fear of sharing that magic more widely, if that's what's aligned. But ultimately what we're saying is we harness magic for ourselves first.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm.
fear is a funny thing. It doesn't really ever go away. You're gonna if you want to oh, sorry, I'm knocking my microphone. If you want to go down this journey, if you want to really go on a transformative journey, fear is part of the bargain, I'm afraid. You don't get to
Mm.
avoid that. So if you're afraid of doing certain things, like starting healing other people, coming out to the world as a witch or as a healer or whatever it is, you don't have to do it all in one go, but you do have to start taking steps in a scary
Mm.
direction. It's
Mm.
something I teach a lot, is that you need to do the uncomfortable things. in order to
Yeah.
grow. This isn't it isn't get out of jail free. It isn't easy. You have to do those things.
Yeah.
I still feel fear all the time. I still do scary things all the time. I don't let it stop me anymore.
Yeah, that's
You don't have
beautiful.
to, it's when you learn that fear doesn't have to mean you stop. You don't like, oh, I'm too frightened. Oh, well, do it anyway. Do the scary thing. You soon learn that, oh, I kind of have to do the scary things because it's on the other side of the scary things when where all the good things are. Oh, okay. So
I love that so much. And it feels like ultimately that's the challenge that Secret Witches hit up against, is that sense of like, oh, I'm feeling the fear, therefore I'm just not cut out for this journey. And actually what it's about is
you're literally
kind of,
butting up against the transformation right there. That is it.
Yeah.
That's the transformation is calling to you. Here you go. You wanted to change. This is where you have to go. It's showing you exactly what you need to do. And if it's scary, it's just showing, okay, that's where you got to go.
Yeah.
If you back off, you're just going back. Nothing's going to change until you go through that.
Yeah.
It's, remember, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure. That's where the treasure is. And this is so transformative. If you can just start doing scary things, if you can just start going to the places, you don't have to go jumping out of a parachute or, doing I don't know, speaking in front of 1 million people. You don't have to do this most scary thing you can think of straight away. Start taking baby steps.
Yeah.
Start doing little, one of the, as part of my membership group, I have monthly challenges. I set a monthly challenge every month, and one of the monthly challenges is to spend every day of 1 month doing a slightly scary thing. It doesn't have to be something really scary. It could be going out without makeup on. It could be talking to a stranger. It's little things like that. And it's incredible how transformative that month can be, to when you do just a little scary thing every day, just to get used to the feeling of doing so.
Yeah. It's cultivating a new relationship with fear, really, isn't it?
Totally.
Is how I see it.
Totally cultivating a different relationship with fear. It's a bit like you still feel fear, but it's like you're no longer afraid of fear, if that makes sense.
It's like there's information in the fear that's going to help us to create differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if, just briefly, and I know this is a huge topic, but one of the areas that Secret Witches can really struggle with and feel deep fear around is money. And I know you had a chapter in your book called Money Can't Buy You Happiness. So I just wondered if you could speak to that, because I think that would be really juicy for the women listening.
Oh, it's such a funny one. Money. Here's what I always teach. Money won't buy you happiness. But you won't believe that. But I still teach people how to get rich. And I've got a book called Becoming Rich, and it's part of my membership. I talk about becoming rich, and I still make loads of money. I still, go out of my way to make money. Money won't make you happy, but you won't believe that until you see it for yourself. So I always say, just get rich, and then worry about whether it's going to make you happy later. Get rich, and then you'll see, oh, it doesn't make me happy. But it's not a bad thing. There's a lot of good you can do with money. I think making money is a great thing to do. It gives you freedom. It gives you, it allows you to help people. It allows you to create a lot of good in the world. There's not so much good you can do when you're really struggling for money. It takes up an awful amount of your psyche, an awful lot amount of your energy on worrying about money. If that's gone, you're just a bit freed up. It won't solve all your problems. It won't give you the happiness you're seeking. But as I say, you won't believe that until you've found it out for yourself. You'll never believe it. You might go around saying it like, oh, I don't really want money, but you probably really do. You probably really would still like a little bit more. You just don't want to be seen as shallow. So make the bloody money, get rich, and then do what you like with it. Give it all away if you want. But I would still always recommend getting rich first. It won't do any harm.
I love that. What about the people who are fearing that they can't get rich from I guess from being in the magic?
That they can't get rich, what that's just another I mean, really, the thought that you can't get rich is just another limiting belief, like I'm useless and I'm not good enough and nobody loves me. I mean, really, it's just you've just got to ignore beliefs like that. When those thoughts pop in, it's just like, I'm not entertaining that. I'm just going to find a way. Just beliefs, a little bit like fear. They don't deserve the attention they get. It's like we imagine that beliefs are deep, hidden, important, powerful things, and they're not. They can change in an instant. Beliefs can change really quite easily.
Yeah, I saw a post the other day, and I'm trying to, I can't remember exactly what it said. It's along the lines of like not trusting our feelings to be the guide, which sounds strange, but it's because on one level they are always a guide, but or yeah, I can't remember the exact phrase now, which is annoying, but it was something along the lines of don't trust your feelings just blindly, which I think is what we're kind of talking to there. It's like there's information in the feelings, so the only thing we can trust them for is to guide us towards seeing where our beliefs are and what stories we're holding, if that makes sense.
I mean, really, the only thing you ever have to do with a feeling is feel it.
Yes. That's exactly
you don't have to do what the feeling is telling you to do. That is where I would agree with that post.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever the feeling is telling you to do, ignore it. Because with the feeling will generally tell you, back off, this is scary, you can't go there, you're not good enough, you can't make money. And there's that feeling, a yucky feeling that comes with that. Don't trust what it's saying. Go to the feeling, the integrity of the feeling itself. And this is such a powerful thing to do. In and of itself is simply to allow yourself to feel everything that comes up.
Yes, I love that. And I love that because I think so many manifestation and magic teachers will teach you to almost like bypass that. Like don't feel that, ignore it, get rid of it and refocus somewhere else, which is of course part of the work, but we do have to feel it. In my view, my experience, we do have to allow ourselves to fully feel it, to see what information's in there about what's having us not create, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's what weird because
I for quite a long time I did teach the paradigm of changing the way you feel, telling a different story, putting a positive slant on things, always looking for the good. And it's almost like that is a necessary, I think that's almost, it was a necessary step for me. And I think it is for a lot of people.
Yes,
in the beginning, when you don't have any sense of your own magic, or you don't have any sense of this really, just the first step might be to start telling a positive story, trying to feel a little bit better. It is to that bypassing thing you're talking about. It's sort of like a step on the way towards another place. So a lot of people can't go fully into the, hey, let's just feel everything that's there and go into the fear. And they're like, oh, no.
Yeah.
You know, go easy on yourself. This is big stuff. Yeah. And if you can't go there, then fine. Just stick with the basic things like telling a positive story, trying to see the good in everything, you know, feeling gratitude for things, not complaining about stuff. Actually, when you cheering yourself up when you feel bad, trying to always keep a positive energy, that will get you somewhere. And then you'll see through it, and then you'll move on to and you'll realize, oh, okay, I don't have to always feel good. I can feel bad sometimes. I just have to tell someone that in the beginning, and it'll bounce off. There are stages to this.
Yes, no, I love that. And that's very much how I see it as well. It's almost like there's islands on the journey. Like we have to visit the island where we do just try and be in the positive story. And then we see, okay, there's something deeper. So it's like a yes and almost. It's like, there's that, and there's this as well.
Always more. There's always more. Whatever you think is true right now. You know, my books have changed. In the 10 years, I think, since I wrote the first one. And in that time, my writing has changed a lot. Yeah. But I can see now that I've left them up there because I can see that everything I said was still true at the time. Yeah. Whatever you think is true right now, it's going to change. You're going to see deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I know what I'm saying now. At some point, I'm going to slip below that. And I'm not going to speak like this anymore. It'll change again. It doesn't mean what I said at that time wasn't true. It was just a bit like science again. It was a way of describing what I was seeing. Islands is a good way of putting it. I see it kind of like a a step down, so you're coming along and you drop into another level of understanding, and then you come along for a bit and then you drop into another level of understanding. That's how I've always pictured it.
Yes.
That you and it don't think it ever stops. I don't know what happens at the end, if it ever does.
Yeah. One day we'll know. Yeah, gorgeous. Well, that feels like a good place to come to a pause. I'm just wondering if there's anything like that you want to share that we haven't explored, or any particular thing, if there was one thing that you really want people to know, or if there's any practical advice just before we complete that you want to share.
What I would just say is, to anybody on this call having doubts, thinking to themselves, I don't know if I'm up to this. I don't think I've got any power. I don't think I'd love to be able to be magic, but I don't think I can. Just know that you bizarrely are already getting it right. Just take, for me, the biggest step, I see the biggest step that a person has to take. The real transformation happens when you start looking in this direction. So the fact you're here means the hard bit's over. From now on, you've just got to keep at it, and it will start to clarify itself. It's when you are anti this whole idea that, well, Secret Witch podcast, what's up, a crazy person are you? If you're still in that mindset, nothing's going to change until you start looking in this direction. So don't worry that it feels like nothing's happening and you don't know what you're doing and you're getting it all wrong. That's part of the journey, actually. That we all go through that. That's an essential part of the journey. Keep at it. Things will change. Things will start to change. You're in exactly the place you need to be. That's what I would say.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. Thank you so much, my love. That's been, yeah, I loved that conversation. Where can people find out about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, I've got a new book coming out actually quite soon. Hopefully by the end of this month. It's called Feasting on Magic. It's actually about a magical approach to weight loss, and it's not about weight loss. It's not a diet book. It's about overeating, food issues, and all the confused ideas we have surrounding food, particularly as women. I think it's not just for women, but I've kind of written it with women in mind. So it's not a diet book, but it's about a magical approach, I suppose, to eating and weight issues. That's coming out soon. But if people want to find out about me, just go to my website, which is called becomingmagic.com. Or search on Amazon for Genevieve Davis and pick a book you like. I can recommend I recommend people start with either the first book, which is called Becoming Magic, or my favorite book, which is called Magic Words and How to Use Them. Pick one of those ones. They're my favorites, I would say.
Actually got your book here.
That's the kind of my memoir. That was actually, I wrote that when I came out because I wanted people to know. It was a little bit like a justification, I suppose, because I felt like I wanted people to know this was real. This was true. This actually happened. So I detailed what happened in that book. This is where I was and this is how it changed. Because it's all very well coming out and saying, hey, I manifested all this stuff. Look at me. And I think there's always a bit of a doubt with people, isn't there? Particularly in the law of attraction world and the manifestation world. Did you really use this, or is that really what happened? And I wanted people to know, this actually can happen. Here's the book. These people are real. These things happened. These are the dates. Check it out. So that's what that book was about. And a lot of people say it's their favorite. So
it is. It's my favorite.
Is it? That one's called Becoming Genevieve. If you want to look up that one, it's called Becoming Genevieve, people. We are plugging myself shamelessly.
Definitely. And we'll put all the links to all of this in the show notes as well. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Loved our conversation. So thank you very much.
No worries. Oh, lovely. It's been lovely talking to you, Nicole. And love to all of your listeners.
What a magical and powerful episode. Here are my takeaways. Genevieve's vulnerable story highlights the deep power of self-illumination in our healing, highlighting the moment she realised she had to save herself and was not a victim, which was her own opening to what she calls real magic. Magic is really another word for our internal creative power, and it's really life-changing when we begin to see that change comes from within. Real magic is created when we truly self-heal. It is inside out healing. We have to do the inner work that often involves looking at our childhood wounding to heal our outer world. This concept of magic transcends traditional views around manifestation and healing, which teach often that it's all about the external and doing or fixing. Real magic and healing require honesty and facing discomfort and fear. Stepping into challenges is a necessary part of our healing and expansion, especially as healers. Magic is something that science can't explain, and it can be tempting to approach it logically, but it really isn't a linear process. We have to feel our way into it. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.